So when you hear games, you usually think either of those massive, super expensive blockbuster AAA titles, or maybe tiny indie games, right? But there's this sweet spot in the middle, the AA games. These are the ones made with a solid budget, but maybe not billions, and they often come out swinging with incredible ideas and fresh gameplay. And let me tell you, some of them are just next level. Today we're diving into 20 of the best AA games out there that are seriously gonna blow your mind. Get ready to find some hidden gems, let's go. Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33. This game is a fantastic example of a modern AA gem that's doing something really special. It might not have the mega budget of a Final Fantasy or a Starfield, but it's packing so much creativity and polish that it's seriously challenging those big hitters. First off, the setting is absolutely wild and gorgeous. Imagine a dark fantasy world, but instead of dusty castles, you're in something inspired by Belle Epoque France. Think late 1800s, but with a surreal, magical, and totally haunting twist. Every year, a terrifying being called the Paintress uses a cursed number to erase everyone on the planet who reaches that age. And guess what? This year, the number is 33, so you're part of Expedition 33, a group of volunteers all aged 33 on a desperate quest to literally find and stop this Paintress before everyone their age disappears. How's that for a chilling premise? It's visually stunning, unique, and just dripping with atmosphere.
Wait, I hear something.
But where this game really shines and earns its mind-blower status is its turn-based combat system. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, turn-based, snooze, but Clair Obscur flips that on its head by adding real-time elements that keep you totally engaged. You got your traditional turns, picking actions, but then, when it's time to attack or defend, you're actually dodging, parrying, and chaining combos with timed button presses. It's like they took the strategic depth of classic JRPGs and injected it with the adrenaline of an action game. It makes every fight feel active and intense, not just a menu-clicking chore. You're controlling a party of really cool characters, each with their own unique skills and abilities, and you get to craft unique builds for them. Plus, the enemies you face, called Nevrons, are these bizarre, surreal, and often terrifying creatures that fit perfectly into the game's dark fantasy vibe. When you're gaming, even tiny shortcuts can make a big difference. That's what I noticed after trying the Ulanzi D200H deck dock. At first, I assumed it was just another Stream Deck, but once I started mapping my controls, it completely changed how I play. It's only $90, but it gives you pro features you'd expect from way pricier gear. Basically, it's a macro keyboard. You take complicated inputs and drop them onto one button. For me, that means I can pull off combos, fast swaps, or repeated actions instantly. The cool thing is how easy it is to set up. You don't have to mess with coding. Just drag, drop, done. And the 14 buttons? Don't let that number fool you. With profiles and 10 pages per profile, you're looking at a massive amount of space for custom gaming setups. I've even set up different profiles for different games, so when I switch from one to another, all my custom buttons are ready to go. It's just super convenient. If you want to try it yourself, I've got a link in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. Lies of P. Now, when this bad boy first showed its face, a lot of folks, bless their hearts, probably looked at it and thought, oh, another Souls-like, huh? Probably just a copycat. And yet, on the surface, it's totally got that challenging, dodge and parry vibe, and it looks a bit like Bloodborne's darker, meaner cousin. But that's where the critics, or anyone who just gave it a quick glance, really missed the forest for the twisted, mechanical trees. This game isn't just a clone, it's a masterpiece that takes inspiration and absolutely runs with it, creating something truly unique and mind-blowingly good for an AA title. First things first, let me tell you about the world of Krat. Man, oh man. Imagine stepping into a dark, gothic fairy tale that's been twisted into a nightmare, but in the most stunning, most haunting way possible. We're talking gorgeous, Belle Epoque-inspired architecture, all those fancy 19th century European vibes, but now it's crumbling and overrun by horrifying murderous puppets. It's beautiful and utterly terrifying at the same time. And you're playing as P, a puppet who wakes up in this mess trying to become human. It's the Pinocchio story, but if Pinocchio joined a metal band and fought for his life in a city gone mad. How cool is that?
But I don't have a choice.
But where this game truly blows your mind and demands your respect is its combat system. Get ready, because this ain't no button mashing fiesta. This is a deliberate, precise, and unbelievably satisfying dance of death. It's gonna kick your butt, no lie, but it's gonna teach you how to fight too. You're gonna learn to perfectly time your parries, to dodge like a pro and to spot those tiny openings. And here's the kicker. If you block an attack, you can regain some of that lost health by quickly landing hits back. It's called guard regain, and it makes every single exchange feel incredibly tense and rewarding. Talos Principle 2.
Could never have imagined.
Okay, so the absolute core of this game is its puzzles, and they are nothing short of brilliant. If you love a good brain teaser, this game is like a supersized box of your favorite mental gymnastics. You're walking around these gorgeous, serene environments, and each area has a bunch of self-contained puzzle chambers. You start with basic stuff like using laser beams and jammers to open doors or activate things, but oh man, it just keeps adding new tools and mechanics. Suddenly you're messing with gravity, creating clone-like copies of yourself to hold down switches, teleporting across gaps, or even switching bodies with other robots. What makes them mind-blowing is how cleverly they're designed. They start simple enough to teach you the ropes, but then they twist those rules in ways you never saw coming. You'll stare at a puzzle, scratch your head, walk away, maybe grab a snack, and then BAM! The solution just hits you like a bolt of lightning. Those aha moments when everything clicks are just pure dopamine for your brain. It's the kind of game that makes you feel incredibly smart when you solve something tricky, even if you spent 20 minutes feeling like the world's biggest dummy right before that. But the Talos Principle 2 isn't just about puzzles, it's a philosophical journey, and this is where it really blows your mind. The story is set in a future where humanity, as we know it, is long gone. The last bit of human culture and knowledge lives on in a city of robots, and you, the player, are actually the 1000th robot created in this new civilization. How cool is that? The characters, even though the robots are incredibly well written and voiced, you actually care about them and their differing viewpoints on the future of robot kind. Their debates feel real and impactful, and your choices in those conversations can even steer the story towards different endings.
Towards the sky. So much would be possible if we believed, if we still had.
Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. The whole setup for the game drops you right into the Warhammer 40,000 universe. If you're not familiar with that world, picture a super dark future where humanity is pretty much always at war, fighting off all kinds of wild alien monsters and other weird stuff that wants to wipe them out. In this game, you step into the boots of Captain Titus, who's one of these special soldiers called a Space Marine. Think of these guys as basically super tough, genetically changed warriors wearing giant, heavy armor. Their big job is to be humanity's shield, defending against all the scary threats out there in the galaxy. In this particular adventure, your main enemies are the Tyranids, which are these terrifying insect-like aliens that show up in just massive, overwhelming numbers. The whole story is about Titus and his small group of fellow Space Marines trying to stop these aliens from taking over planets and just destroying everything in their path. It's a pretty straightforward story about good guys fighting really bad guys, but it's got a lot of that grim, dark, sci-fi style that the Warhammer 40,000 world is known for. When you're actually playing Space Marine 2, the main thing you'll be doing is fighting. A whole lot of fighting, actually. You'll spend your time switching between shooting and getting up close for melee combat. For shooting, you'll use different kinds of guns, like the iconic Bolter, which is a big, powerful rifle. The game is known for throwing a ridiculous number of enemies at you all at once, so you're often just blasting away into this huge, swarming crowd of aliens. And when those enemies get too close for comfort, that's when you pull out your melee weapons. You might use something like a chainsword. Yeah, it's a sword with a chainsaw on it, pretty wild, right? Or a big power hammer to smack them around. These attacks are pretty strong, and you can really chop or smash enemies into pieces. Plus, since you're a super soldier Space Marine, you also have some special powers or abilities you can use in a fight, like maybe a powerful ground pound that knocks enemies back, or a temporary shield to keep you safe when things get too wild. The main goal through the different levels is usually to clear out areas full of enemies and just keep pushing forward. You can go through the main story all by yourself, which is a good challenge, or if you want to bring some pals along, you can actually team up with 2 friends and play through the whole campaign together. That's a pretty fun way to tackle the huge alien hordes. There are also other game modes where you can just fight endless waves of enemies or even go head to head against other players. A Plague Tale Games. Now these games are made by a studio called Asterigos Studio, and they really hit a sweet spot as games that are like actually amazing stories. Like don't have the absolutely massive budget of something like a Grand Theft Auto or a Call of Duty, but they use every single bit of their resources to create something truly special. They show that you don't need billions of dollars to tell a powerful story and deliver a truly amazing experience. The whole idea behind these games is pretty heavy. They drop you right into a super dark version of medieval France during the terrifying time of the Black Death. It's not just a sickness in this world, though, it's also tied to these absolutely massive swarming hordes of plague-carrying rats, like millions of them. You mainly play as Amicia Darun, a teenage girl who is desperately trying to protect her younger brother, Hugo. Hugo has some kind of mysterious, magical connection to the plague and the rats, and because of this, they're both being hunted down by the scary Inquisition, like a religious police force, and, of course, those endless waves of hungry, biting rats. These games are mostly about stealth and puzzle solving. You're usually outnumbered and outmatched by soldiers and even the rats, so running and gunning isn't an option. Amicia is not a super soldier, she's just a girl with a slingshot, at least at first. A big part of the gameplay revolves around light and darkness. The rats hate light, so you're constantly finding ways to use torches, braziers, or special alchemical concoctions to scare them away, or create safe paths through areas swarming with them. If you step into the shadows without light, those rats will devour you in seconds, and it's pretty horrifying to watch. You also have to use the rats against your human enemies sometimes by extinguishing their lights and letting the rats do the dirty work. You'll use alchemy a lot too. Amicia can craft different types of ammunition for her slingshot or other tools. She can make fire pots to light things up, smoke bombs to distract enemies, or even potions to attract rats to certain spots. Later in the second game, Amicia gets a bit more capable in direct combat, but it's still about being smart and strategic, not just rushing in. Hugo also has his own special abilities related to the rats, which become a huge part of solving puzzles and getting through areas.
I feel my mind going. I know. Think of your brother. We have to carry on.
Banishers Ghosts of New Eden. The whole idea behind this game is pretty unique, and it mixes a sad love story with ghost hunting. You play as 2 characters, Red Mac Wraith and Antia Dwart. They're not just partners, they're also deeply in love, and their job is to be banishers. Think of them as special people who hunt down ghosts and try to help spirits move on, protecting the living from them. When you're playing the game, you'll actually control both Red and Antea. You can switch between them pretty easily, and they both have different ways to fight and interact with the world. Red is the living one, so he uses physical weapons like swords and a rifle to deal with human enemies and some of the more solid-looking ghosts. Antea, since she's a ghost, has special spirit powers. She can do things like unleash powerful energy blasts or sort of dash through enemies. Some enemies are easier to hurt with Red's physical attacks, while others are more vulnerable to Antea's ghostly powers, so you're constantly switching between them to take down different bad guys. It makes the combat feel pretty dynamic, you know, like you're always trying to figure out the best way to handle a fight. Beyond the fighting, a huge part of the game is about investigating hauntings. You'll go around to different areas, talk to people who are being haunted, and look for clues to figure out why a certain ghost is sticking around. You uncover these little stories, and they often involve sad or messy stuff from the past. Once you've figured out what happened, you have to make a tough choice for each haunting. Do you help the ghost move on peacefully? Do you force them to leave, which is called banishing them? Or do you decide that a living person was actually responsible for the problem and, well, sacrifice that living person to help Antea get closer to coming back to life? These choices are a big deal, and they actually have consequences for the story and how things end up for Red and Antea. It adds a lot of weight to your decisions, making you really think about what's right and wrong. Robocop Rogue City. The whole idea behind Robocop Rogue City is pretty simple and cool. You get to be Robocop. If you've seen the old movies, you know who that is. Part man, part machine, all cop. The game takes place in old Detroit, which is basically a super messed up, crime-ridden city in the near future. It's set between the second and third Robocop movies, so it feels really connected to that classic film series. Your job as Robocop is to bring law and order to these chaotic streets, dealing with all sorts of crazy criminals and gangs. The story involves a new crime boss causing trouble and a drug called Nuke that's making things even worse. You'll actually run into some familiar faces from the movies, which is a nice touch for fans.
You're okay there, Murphy? The OCP police have shown us time and time again that we all—
When you're playing the game, it's mostly a first-person shooter, so you see everything through Robocop's eyes. But here's the thing that makes it unique. You don't play like a typical fast-moving soldier. Robocop is a giant, heavily armored cyborg, right? So you move slowly and deliberately, like a tank. You feel incredibly tough, like bullets are just bouncing off you. The combat is really satisfying because you're constantly pushing forward, blasting enemies with Robocop's iconic Auto 9 pistol, which has unlimited ammo, by the way. You can also pick up other weapons that enemies drop, like shotguns or assault rifles, and use those too. The game doesn't just throw a few bad guys at you, it often sends a whole bunch of them at once, so you're just constantly shooting into a crowd of criminals, watching them go flying with each hit. It's pretty over the top with the action, and you can even blow up parts of the environment like walls or cover to get at hiding enemies. Kenna Bridge of Spirits. You play as Kana, who's a young spirit guide. In her world, when people die, sometimes their spirits get stuck and can't move on, especially if they had a lot of sadness or anger. These stuck spirits can cause trouble, corrupting the land and making it all dark and overgrown. Kana's job is to help these troubled spirits finally find peace and move on to the afterlife. She travels to this abandoned village which has been messed up by a bad spirit, and her goal is to figure out what happened there and help all the lingering spirits. When you're playing the game, you'll spend your time doing a mix of things, exploring, solving some puzzles, and getting into combat. Kenna has a magic staff that she uses for both close-up attacks, and later on she can turn it into a bow for shooting at enemies from far away. But here's the really neat part, she's not alone. She finds these super tiny, cute, fuzzy black creatures called the Rot. They're like little nature spirits, and they follow her around. As you explore, you find more and more of them, and the more Rot you have, the stronger Kenna gets, and the more things they can help you with. The Rot are a big part of how you play. In combat, you can command them to distract enemies or gather together to do a powerful special attack. They can also mess with certain weak points on bigger enemies, making them easier to hurt. Outside of fights, the Rot help you with puzzles and exploring. They can move heavy objects for you, build bridges, or even clear out the dark corruption that's blocking paths in the world. It's pretty satisfying to see an area covered in this dark goo and then slowly clear it out with the Rot, watching the nature bloom back to life. The game's visuals are honestly a huge standout. It looks like a Pixar or Disney animated movie. The characters are expressive, the environments are super colorful and detailed, and those little Rot guys are just adorable. Even though the story can be a bit sad and deals with heavy stuff like loss and grief, the game still feels very hopeful and visually appealing. The music is also really nice and fits the magical, mystical vibe of the game. Remnant 2. The whole basic setup of Remnant 2 is pretty interesting and a bit wild. Humanity is barely hanging on, living in a small settlement called Ward 13. The world has been pretty much wrecked by something called the Root, which is this super aggressive, plant-like evil force that just spreads everywhere and takes over worlds. Your character is a new survivor, and you get pulled into this big mission to try and stop the Root for good. This means you'll be traveling to a bunch of different crazy-looking worlds through special portals, each with its own unique environments, creatures, and problems. The story is about trying to understand what the Root is, where it came from, and how to finally deal with it, all while trying to keep humanity from being wiped out. Playing the game, it's a lot about shooting and getting into combat. You'll use a mix of firearms like rifles and shotguns, and you also have a melee weapon for when enemies get too close. The fights can get pretty intense, especially against the bosses, which are often really huge and have tricky attack patterns. It's the kind of game where you need to be good at dodging out of the way of attacks and figuring out enemy weaknesses. What's cool is that you don't just pick one class at the start. The game uses something called archetypes, which are kind of like character classes. You start with one, but you can actually unlock a second one later on, mixing and matching abilities and play styles. This lets you build your character pretty much how you want, whether you want to be a tough tank, a healer, or someone who deals tons of damage from afar. You're always finding new gear like rings and amulets that change how your character plays, so there's a lot to experiment with. So one of the really neat things about Remnant 2 is how its worlds are put together. Every time you start a new campaign, or even if you just start what they call adventure mode for a specific world, the game actually shuffles things around. The layout of the dungeons, what events you find, which side quests pop up, and even which bosses you fight can be different each time. So one playthrough might have you exploring a desert world and fighting a giant insect boss, while another run might send you through spooky gothic ruins with a completely different set of challenges. Kingdom Come Deliverance. The whole idea behind Kingdom Come Deliverance is pretty unique because it's all about being super realistic and historically accurate. Unlike most fantasy RPGs where you've got dragons, magic, and elves, this game throws all that out the window. It's set in Bohemia, which is now part of the Czech Republic, back in the year 1403. You play as a guy named Henry, who starts out as just a simple blacksmith's son, but then his peaceful village gets attacked by an army, his family is killed, and he pretty much loses everything. So the story follows Henry as he tries to get revenge and ends up getting caught right in the middle of a brutal civil war and a struggle for the throne. It's a deep, personal story about a regular guy trying to survive and make his way in a really tough time based on actual historical events and places. And when you're actually playing the game, it's very different from a lot of other RPGs. Because it's so focused on realism, Henry starts off as a complete nobody. He's not some chosen hero, he's just a peasant. So for instance, in the beginning, he's actually pretty bad at fighting, and he can't even read. All your skills like sword fighting, archery, stealth, or even just picking locks only get better the more you do them. If you want to get good with a sword, you actually have to train with a sword master in the game. If you want to be sneaky, you gotta practice sneaking around without getting caught. It's It's a game where you really feel Henry's journey from a clueless kid to becoming more capable. The combat system is a big part of that realism. It's not just swinging your weapon wildly. You have to think about where you're aiming your strikes, where your enemy's armor is weakest, and how to block or parry attacks from different directions. It can be pretty tough at first, and you'll probably get beaten up a lot, especially by more experienced fighters, which makes sense since you're just a blacksmith kid. You also have to think about what kind of armor you're wearing and how it affects your movement and what kind of weapon is best against different types of armor. The world itself is a really detailed open map of 15th century Bohemia. You can explore castles, villages, forests, and monasteries, and everything looks and feels like it belongs in that time period. The developers did a lot of research to make it as accurate as possible, from the clothes people wear to the way the buildings look. Still wakes the deep. The core idea for this game puts you in a tough spot. You are a guy called Cameron Kaz McLeary, an electrician on a large offshore oil rig called the Barra D. The story is set in the 1970s, which lends the setting a specific kind of worn industrial feel. A massive storm is already battering the rig, creating a constant sense of chaos and noise. To make matters worse, something truly unexpected and disturbing surfaces from the deep ocean and manages to get onto the platform. Soon, all ways to communicate with the outside world are cut off, leaving no escape. Kaz's journey becomes a desperate fight for survival as he tries to understand what this strange entity is and perhaps find any crewmates who are still alive. It's a narrative that centers on feeling utterly isolated and trapped in a perilous situation. As you navigate this experience, you won't be using any weapons or engaging in direct combat. Kaz is just a regular worker, so his abilities are those of an ordinary person. Instead, your primary actions involve moving through the damaged oil rig, staying out of sight, and figuring out practical problems. You'll spend a lot of time carefully traversing narrow passageways, climbing up and down ladders, and squeezing through tight spaces, all while the rig itself seems to be slowly breaking apart around you. Often, you'll need to repair parts of the rig, like rerouting power or getting old machinery operational again, simply to clear a path or open a locked door. When the unusual presence or crew members affected by it are nearby, your best option is to find a hiding spot. This might mean ducking under furniture or slipping into a storage locker. You can also toss objects like tools to create a diversion, drawing attention away from your position so you can slip past unnoticed. The game creates a strong feeling of vulnerability, making you cautious with every step. Alien's Dark Descent.
More are coming! Move on! Sentry gun.
This game kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, but man, it shouldn't have. Like, if you're even slightly into the Alien universe, or just love that old school squad-based tactical vibe, this one's gonna surprise you. Honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, cool, another isometric strategy thing, maybe XCOM with xenomorphs, right? But no, it's more than that. It's got this real-time with pause thing going on, which, yeah, I know that sounds kind of nerdy, but it works. It keeps the tension high, and that's the key word here, tension. This game nails that classic Alien atmosphere, not just in the visuals or sound design, but like in how it makes you play. You feel paranoid. You're creeping around dark hallways with your squad, hearing every little beep and hiss, knowing that if you screw up, you're gonna lose someone important. And not like reload the save, lose them. I mean, they're gone, and now your squad's down a crucial skill set for the rest of the campaign. And I love that. I love when a game actually commits to stuff like that. Permadeath, stress mechanics, limited resources, it all piles on until you're sweating over whether to push forward or pull back and regroup. And the base management stuff in between missions? Low-key addictive. You get that little dopamine hit from upgrading your marines and unlocking new tech, but it never feels like fluff. It all feeds back into the survival horror loop. Also, shout out to the story for actually being, you know, good. It doesn't reinvent the wheel or anything, but it respects the lore and adds just enough of its own flavor to feel fresh. If you're a fan of that grimy, corporate, screwing everyone over type of sci-fi, this one delivers.
Suppressing fire! Focus fire on target!
Wayland Yutani, building better worlds.
Ghostrunner 2. So if you didn't play the first one, quick catch up. You're a cybernetic sword dude, wall running through neon-drenched skyscrapers, slicing up enemies in one-hit kill combat while doing parkour gymnastics that make Spider-Man dizzy. It's fast, it's twitchy, and when it clicks, holy crap, it feels so good. Now Ghostrunner 2, it takes all that and just cranks it. Adds a little more spice, new abilities, new enemies, better level design, and oh yeah, they gave you a motorcycle. Yep, the second I saw that trailer, I was like, wait, I get to bike through a collapsing cyber factory while dodging lasers? And yes, you do. And somehow it doesn't feel gimmicky. Like the bike sections are actually well designed and smooth as hell. It's like Tron meets Doom Eternal, but you've got a katana. One thing I really respect though, it still respects your time. This isn't some bloated 40-hour open world collect-a-thon. It's tight, focused, it throws you into a level, slaps you with a challenge, and says, alright ninja, figure it out. And that trial and error loop, super addictive. You die, you try again, you get a little further, and then suddenly you're pulling off moves that make you feel like you belong in a highlight reel. Self of Midnight. This is definitely a very niche title, but I think we can appreciate this AA gem for what it is. The whole premise of this game is super cool and draws a lot from the American Deep South, but with a magical folklore twist. You get to play as Hazel Flood, who starts out as a pretty normal teenager, a track star even, but then a massive hurricane rips through her hometown of Prospero and things get really wild. Her mom gets swept away and Hazel suddenly discovers she's a weaver. Think of a weaver as someone with a magical ability to see and fix broken bonds and spirits. So her big mission becomes trying to find her mom and put her town back together, all while learning to use these new ancient powers and dealing with creatures straight out of southern myths. It's a bit like a modern folktale where reality and fantasy get all mixed up in a really unique way.
You're a weaver, aren't you?
As you explore this world, you'll be doing a lot of things. One moment you'll be exploring the rich, sometimes eerie landscapes of this fictionalized deep south, from flooded towns to spooky swamps. The game has a unique art style that kind of looks like stop-motion animation, which really makes it stand out visually. You'll also encounter a bunch of mythical creatures from southern folklore, like haints, which are these shadowy, destructive foe. To deal with them, you use Hazel's weaving magic. This isn't just basic button-mashing combat. You'll learn different spells to bind enemies, pull them closer, or push them away, and even conjure up a little doll named Crouton who can help you out by possessing enemies or sneaking into small spaces. You'll also use these weaving powers to solve environmental puzzles like making invisible objects appear or pulling things to new locations to open up paths. It's a blend of action, exploration, and figuring things out. First, Berserk Khazan. The whole setup for this game is pretty intense, man. It's actually part of this huge online game world called Dungeon and Fighter, but honestly, you don't need to know squat about that to jump into this one. The story is all about this legendary general named Khazan. Long story short, he gets totally screwed over, falsely accused of being a traitor to his whole empire, so they exile him to this super cold, empty place and he almost dies, but he survives barely, and from there the whole game is just about Khazan's crazy, revenge-fueled journey. He's trying to get back at everyone who stabbed him in the back and figure out what really happened. It's a pretty dark, gritty story, but it pulls you in. Also this game, it's all about the fighting, and let me tell ya, it's no walk in the park. It's one of those games where the combat is really tough and fast. Like, you gotta be on your toes, you can't just mash buttons. You really gotta learn how to dodge out of the way, how to parry, and figuring out when it's safe to actually hit the bad guys. Khazan can use different types of weapons too. You can swing a giant sword, poke with a spear, or go fast with two smaller blades. Each weapon feels different to use, and they've got their own special moves, and oh man, the bosses, they are no joke. They're usually huge, hit super hard, and you have to really study how they move if you want to beat them. When you finally take one down, it feels like a real accomplishment, you know? Another crab's treasure. The whole setup for this adventure is actually pretty clever and a bit sad in a funny way. You play as a little hermit crab named Krill. Now, hermit crabs usually live in shells, right? Well, Krill's got his nice shell. But then this shady loan shark comes along and get this, repossesses it. Yeah, he just takes Krill's home right off his back. So Krill's big goal becomes finding a way to buy back his treasured shell. This sends him on a huge journey across a really interesting underwater world. What's cool is that this ocean world is kind of messed up by pollution, so instead of finding fancy treasures, a lot of the useful stuff Krill finds to wear as a shell is actually discarded human trash. It's got this subtle message about how we treat the oceans, but it's mixed with humor.
If you can go get that treasure that you're on about, I'll gladly trade your shell for it.
When you're scurrying around in this game, a lot of your time is spent in combat and exploration. You've got this little fork you use to attack, and it's all about timing your dodges and parries, just like in those tougher action games. But here's the really neat part. Since you're a hermit crab, you're constantly finding and swapping out different pieces of trash to use as your shell. And get this, every single piece of trash could be a soda can, a thimble, even a broken thimble gives you a different special ability. They call these shell spells. So one shell might let you shoot bubbles, another might give you a big protective shield, or turn you into a spinning top. This means you're always trying out new shells and their powers, which keeps the fighting super fresh and makes you adapt on the fly. Your shells can break if they take too much damage, so you're always on the lookout for a new improvised home. Asterigos, Curse of the Stars. So the easiest way to describe it, it's like a baby Souls game, but not in a bad way. Like, imagine if someone looked at Dark Souls and went, okay, but what if we made this way more chill, less grimdark, and added color? Boom, Asterigos. You play as Hilda, a young warrior girl with major Disney princess energy, but, you know, with a spear and fireballs. She's on a quest to find her lost dad or something noble like that, and yeah, it's a little cheesy, but honestly, it works. The story's surprisingly decent, and the world has this Greek meets Roman fantasy vibe that feels fresh. Not super original, but it's got charm. And I mean actual charm, not we're trying to be quirky, but it's cringe charm. Now, gameplay-wise, it's got some Soulsy DNA, like dodge rolls, stamina, boss fights, the usual. But the cool thing is it's way more forgiving. You're not gonna rage quit and punch a hole in your wall like you might with, say, Lies of P or something. It's approachable, but still fun. Combat actually gives you options. You can switch between different weapon styles mid-fight, so you're not locked into one playstyle the whole game. Sword and shield, hammer, staff, whatever fits your mood. And leveling up feels snappy. It's not grindy. The game wants you to play and explore, not suffer. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. And the core idea of this game drops you right into this really strange, old, kind of creepy hotel located somewhere in Central Europe. You're playing as a woman who's been called there by an eccentric artist or director, but it's not totally clear why you're there or what you're supposed to do. As you start poking around the hotel, things quickly get pretty weird. The whole place is full of secrets, hidden passages, and locked doors, and nothing seems to make complete sense at first. The story is kind of like a big tangled puzzle itself, itself, where you're piecing together fragments of what happened in different time periods, 1847, 1963, and 2014, to uncover a larger unsettling truth. It's a mystery that keeps you guessing about who you are, why you're there, and what exactly is going on. When you're exploring this wild hotel, the way you actually play the game is almost entirely about solving puzzles, and let me tell you, these aren't just simple find the key type puzzles. Many of them are really intricate, involving codes, symbols, math, logic, and sometimes even looking at things from weird angles. The game is designed to make you feel a bit overwhelmed at first, like you've just stepped into a giant escape room where everything is a clue. It actually encourages you to have a real-life notebook and pen handy because you'll need to jot down notes, draw diagrams, and work out solutions on paper. You'll be moving through the hotel, finding documents, interacting with strange machines, and trying to connect all these seemingly random bits of information. There's not really any combat or big action sequences. It's all about using your brain to untangle a huge web of interconnected puzzles. Evil West. It's basically like if someone threw God of War and Red Dead Redemption into a blender, then dumped a whole bottle of monster hunting juice in there. You play as this gruff cowboy dude named Jesse, and he works for a secret vampire hunting organization. Yeah, that kind of game. It's not trying to be deep or poetic or whatever, it's just like, hey, what if cowboys had lightning gauntlets and punched demons in the face? And honestly, I respect that. Right out the gate, this game lets you know what it's about. You're not solving puzzles or walking through slow dialogue trees. Nah, you're busting through saloon doors, shooting werewolves in the head with an old school rifle, and then uppercutting them into a pile of TNT. It's over-the-top, chunky, arcade-style action, and it feels good. Like everything has this weight to it. The punches, the shotgun blasts, the finishers, all of it lands like a punch to the jaw. Very crunchy, very satisfying. And yeah, it's a little old school in how it plays. Linear levels, big arenas full of baddies, some upgrades and lore bits tucked into side paths. Honestly, it reminded me of those Xbox 360 era action games where you just chill on the couch, turn off your brain a little, and blast through a bunch of gnarly monsters with zero guilt. And I miss that style of game, man. Not everything needs to be a 90-hour epic or a live service grind fest. Sometimes I just want to zap a vampire with my electric knuckle dusters and keep it moving.
Hé te! Várj csak egy kicsit! Mit akarsz, hogy ennyit mámészkodsz itt? Figyelj, nem nagy ügy.